Yeah, I got this in an email this morning, actually, from wisconsinwave.org. And we're going to try and get somebody on the program later on, probably in our third hour today, from this group. Here's what they have to say. In fact, they're trying to raise money to pay for this hand recount all around the state. You know, there's been all this sturm and drang in Wisconsin about how tight that one senatorial race was, where the Democrat ended up winning when they did the recount, and the Democrat still won after the recount. And I can find a bunch of right-wing sites that are like, looks like these bags of ballots were opened and tampered with, you know, the kind of old-fashioned voting fraud stuff. People were voting on paper ballots, but they were counted by machines. Like those test-taking machines, but they're still machines, and they're programmed by the voting machine companies, and there's a fair amount of evidence that those machines are just as hackable as any other machine. And then the results of those machines get sent into central tabulating machines, and that's what Bev Harris and Howard Dean hacked on national TV on Tina Brown's Topic A with Tina Brown program when Howard Dean filled in for her back about 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever it was. And, you know, in 90 seconds, they hacked a Diebold tabulator. Now, that wasn't the machine on which you vote. That was the machine that takes the totals from all the machines, which could include they're using in Wisconsin. So anyhow, all the right-wingers are like, oh, there's something wrong here. And now progressives are starting a grassroots coalition, which includes the Wisconsin Wave, has formed, wisconsinwave.org is their website, has formed to verify the accuracy and integrity of the election results. This is amazing. These concerns, okay, first of all, they point out the exit polls were showing right up until 8 p.m. that it was a 50-50 race. This was the Scott Walker recall. That Tom Barrett may well, the mayor of Milwaukee may well end up being the next governor. And then 20, 30 minutes after with only a quarter of the precincts reporting, the networks say, yeah, Scott Walker won. Look at those numbers. So then they had this official count that was 53% Walker, 46% Barrett, while the exit polls were showing 50-50. So how do you account for a 6-point swing when exit polls and vote totals in the United States, right up until 1998, were always within 0.5%, at the most 1%, typically 0.1%? They call elections in most European countries, in Germany, for example, they call elections the same day of the election, even though it takes 3 days to count them, because they have exit polls. The exit polls are never more than 0.1 point off. When the former Soviet Republic of Georgia had an election that we all thought was a little weird, or many people in the world thought was a little weird, you know how they proved? You know how they called for a recount? Or a re-election, actually redo the election? It was because the exit polls didn't match the results. We did that with Georgia. We did it with another one of the former Soviet republics. I mean, this is all around the world. We, the United States of America, we go in and say, let's have a count, let's have exit polls to verify whether the count on the election is accurate. And if there's more than a couple of points difference, then, hey, there's something funky going on here. Well, there was a 6-point difference in Wisconsin between the exit polls and the actual result. And as they note over at wisconsinwave.org, these concerns were amplified when citizen observers monitoring the Racine Senate recount, this is the one that they just recounted, and they said, oh, yeah, hey, look at it, the Democrat actually won. Now, if the Democratic senator won, why didn't the Democratic gubernatorial candidate win? Good question. So anyhow, these concerns were amplified when citizen observers monitoring the Racine Senate recount decided to also double-check the gubernatorial race. The results were extremely disturbing. In the Racine precincts where observers were stationed, statistically significant differences were found between the recounted totals and the official election night totals. You get this now? We're talking the official election night totals, and then they take the exact same pieces of paper and recount them by hand, and they get a different number. than the machine that counted it first said happened. And here's where it gets even more weird, even more troubling. In every case, these disparities benefited Walker over Barrett. Now, if you had random errors, if you had funky machines, if you had, somebody dropped a pile of ballots on the whatever, in precinct after precinct after precinct, you would expect, okay, this one is off by 1% this way, this one's off, in favor of Barrett, this one's off by 1% in favor of Walker. It all kind of comes out in the wash because the machines are not all that good at reading the ballots. But when every single one produces, when you hand recount the vote and compare it with the official total is higher for Scott Walker. So how did Wisconsin really vote on June 5th? I have a concern about this. I've been writing about this since 2001 or 2002. If you go, search my name and elections or voting machines, and you'll find these pieces that I was writing back before I was doing a radio show. I've been on this topic. And my argument is two parts. One, obviously, there's no such thing as a secure computer technology. Don't believe that? Ask the FBI or the CIA, who had their websites hacked by Anonymous. I mean, there's just no such thing, right? I mean, and on top of that, I mean, we're not talking about multi-million-dollar, computer technologies here. We're talking about, $3,000 slightly modified Windows machines with touch screens, or, as just plain old, Windows machines, with a Windows operating system. And then on top of that, you got this program, this proprietary program that runs for the tabulators. I mean, that's how the way that Bev Harris and Howard Dean hacked that Diebold machine on national television in 90 seconds was they went into the Windows operating system. They didn't go into the program and hack the program. They didn't have to. They simply went into Windows. You go into Windows, and here's the files, the tabulator files with the totals. Open up one of the files, take 500 votes out of Lex Luthor's category and put it into Howard Dean's category, and poof, you've changed an election. You close the files back up, you go out. Now, so you did all this in Windows. You just open these files with Notepad or something, move the numbers around, and then you go out of Windows, and there's no trace that you were ever there, because when you open the back then it was called the GEMS system. I don't know if it still is, but when you open the vote tabulator program, it notices whether it has been opened recently. Well, it hadn't been. So, I've got a concern about the fact that we're really voting on Windows machines? I mean, seriously? And the average age of the volunteers who are working in the polls is 70 right now? It's over 70. These are people who came of age 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when civic duty was a high value. This was before Reagan came along and said, no, government is evil and greed is good and only corporations are wonderful. So these are people who came of age before 1980 who actually believed that volunteering to help something like the elections was your civic responsibility. I remember as a little kid, my mom sitting there. I couldn't vote. I was a little kid. I was standing there. They had the tables set up, these 3 by 6 foot tables that you use in the elementary. This was in the elementary school where I went to school, and I stood there for hours watching my mom and she had the voter book, and people would come up and say, "Hi, I'm Joe Blow," and she'd open the book and she'd find their name and she'd have them sign and she'd compare the signature, and if it was the same, then she'd say, "Okay, go vote." And then they would step behind her and they voted on these machines, actually. These mechanical machines. But you could walk around the back of the machine and you could see all the levers and things, all the gears. You could see how they added the numbers up. It was totally transparent. Not only that, the machines were owned by the government. So it was a completely transparent process. These were literally mechanical, like levers that you pulled. Well, now these voting machine companies have figured out a way to not have levers anymore. No. We've got bits and bytes, and you can't see them, by the way. They all happen inside a little tiny chip. And the programming is proprietary. So that's my first concern about voting machines, which is why, by the way, the government of Ireland, and we reported on this story last week, the government of Ireland is selling the voting machines that they bought back in 2000. They used them once in the election in 2002, and they were horrified by the result. Why they're selling their voting machines for scrap metal right now. The second reason, and frankly, I think the more important reason, although I'm not a fan of being able to hack an election, I don't think that's a good thing. But even worse, the biggest picture on this thing is that what we have done by having private for-profit corporations count our votes in secret, even if it wasn't in secret, by having private for-profit corporations count our vote, is we've privatized our vote. They turn it into a profit center for some corporation who's more interested in enhancing their profits. And which party typically is more sympathetic with corporations that want to enhance their profits versus, say, hey, let's raise the corporate tax back up to where it was during the Johnson administration so that we can actually have a great society again? So we've privatized the beating heart of democracy. You know, this is frankly, this is the biggest argument, is the commons argument. The reason why our government was created was to oversee the commons. We, the people, right? We got together to ensure that all of the things that are necessary for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the commons, could be protected and administered appropriately. And the way that we, the people, tell our elected representatives how to administer the commons is by the vote. So you could say of all the commons, the most important one is the government itself that we own in common, because that administers everything else. And the most important part of the government itself, of that commons, is the vote, because that's the mechanism by which we tell our government how to behave. And you're seriously going to tell me that we turned that over to private, for-profit, and in the case of Diebold and the S&S, openly Republican-leaning corporations? Really? We got a big problem in this country. Check out WisconsinWave.org. See what they're doing.